Chapter 21. Alina had a feeling the day was going downhill when Celine kicked open her door at sunrise. "Get dressed," Celine barked. "Border raid. Fenris's wolves hit 3 patrols last night." Alina, still half asleep and clinging to her blanket, groaned. "Can't they at least wait until after breakfast to terrorize us? Rude." Celine rolled her eyes. "I'll bring you a muffin. Now move." 10 minutes later, Alina was trudging through the village, fully dressed but not emotionally ready to deal with this level of chaos. Wolves were shouting orders, running to and from the training grounds, and generally acting like the sky was falling. She found Marcus near the edge of the village, leaning on a spear like it was a fashion accessory. "Morning, Luna," he greeted with a grin. Dodging a warrior sprinting past with an armful of weapons. "Fenris's goons hit our patrols overnight. Nothing too major, just enough to stir the pot." Marcus's grin faded slightly. "Darius isn't happy." "Oh, great." Alina spotted Darius nearby, pacing like a very stressed predator while snapping orders at a group of warriors. His tone was sharper than usual, and his golden eyes glinted with barely contained anger. She sighed. "Yeah, he doesn't look thrilled." Marcus smirked. "Understatement of the year." Alina hesitated before approaching Darius. "Hey, maybe take a breath before you scare the fur off everyone?" Darius stopped mid-sentence, his eyes locking on her. For a moment, she thought he might growl, but instead, he exhaled sharply. "I don't have time to breathe, Alina," he said, his voice tight. "Fenris is testing us. If we don't respond, he'll keep pushing." "Well, yeah," Alina said, crossing her arms. "But if you keep snarling at your own wolves, you're going to end up fighting half the pack. And Fenris." Darius's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. Instead, he turned back to the warriors, issuing more orders, this time slightly less growly. Progress, Alina thought. Over the next few days, things only got worse. Fenris's forces staged tiny, annoying raids along the Blackridge borders, stealing supplies, leaving ominous claw marks on trees, and generally being a pain in the tail. The pack was on edge, and Darius's growing paranoia didn't help. He doubled patrols, tightened security, and spent more time brooding than talking to anyone. Alina noticed it during training sessions. The warriors hesitated before following Darius's orders, their glances quick and uncertain. Even Marcus, usually the pack's comic relief, seemed unusually quiet. "Is it just me?" Alina whispered to him during a patrol briefing. "Or does everyone look like they're about to bolt?" Marcus shrugged, his usual grin replaced with a frown. "Wolves get jumpy when they think their alpha's losing control. Fenris knows that." "Fantastic," Alina muttered. "So we're spiraling into a paranoia tornado." "Pretty much." Late one night, while the village was quiet, Alina couldn't sleep. She wandered toward the council hall, thinking maybe she could sneak some tea and pretend life wasn't falling apart. As she approached, voices carried through the open door. She froze. Inside, 2 council members, Garrick and another elder named Oren, were whispering urgently. "This is getting out of hand," Garrick muttered. "The pack's falling apart." "It's Darius," Oren replied. "He's too focused on Fenris to see what's happening here." "You mean the cracks," Garrick said grimly. "Wolves are starting to question him." Oren hesitated before lowering his voice further. What if Fenris isn't wrong?" Alina's heart skipped. "What?" Garrick didn't respond right away. "Careful, Oren. That kind of talk could get you killed." "Only if someone tells him," Oren said pointedly. Alina pressed herself against the wall, her mind racing. Were they siding with Fenris? The conversation ended abruptly, and footsteps approached. Alina darted into the shadows, her pulse pounding as the 2 elders walked past, oblivious to her presence. Once they were gone, she leaned against the wall, trying to calm the storm in her chest. This is bad, really bad. She knew she had to tell Darius, but as she stood there, the weight of what she'd overheard settled on her shoulders like a ton of bricks. Fenris wasn't just targeting the borders. He was targeting the pack's faith in Darius. And if even the council was starting to doubt him, things were about to get a whole lot worse. Chapter 22. Alina knew something was up when Celine walked into the training field like she'd been cast as the lead villain in an action movie. The other wolves fell silent, their conversations dying as Celine stopped in the center of the field, her arms crossed and her glare set to maximum intensity. "Luna!" Celine called, her voice cutting through the air like a blade. Alina, who had been minding her own business, and by that she meant trying to figure out how to not trip during sparring practice, froze. Hi?" she said, blinking at Celine. Celine's eyes narrowed. "I'm tired of watching you stumble your way through leadership while the pack falls apart." "Oh, cool, starting with an insult. Love that for us." Celine ignored her. "You don't belong here, Alina, and I think it's time we proved it." Alina tilted her head, frowning. "Prove it how?" Celine smirked. "A formal challenge. Right here, right now." The crowd gasped, because of course they did. Wolves loved a good public showdown. Alina's stomach dropped. A formal challenge? That wasn't sparring, that was serious. "Celine, be reasonable," Marcus called from the sidelines, looking deeply uncomfortable. "She's a healer, not a fighter." "She's the Luna," Celine snapped. "If she can't defend her position, she shouldn't hold it." Darius stepped forward, his expression pure alpha rage. "Celine, stand down." "No," Celine said firmly. "This is my right." Darius looked ready to intervene, but Alina raised a hand. "Wait," she said, her voice steady despite the fact that she was internally screaming. Darius turned to her, his golden eyes flashing. "Alina, you don't have to do this." She offered him a small, nervous smile. "Yeah, but if I don't, Celine's going to keep breathing down my neck forever. Might as well get it over with." Celine grinned, already shifting into a fighting stance. "Fine," Alina said, stepping into the circle. "But let's keep it fair. No claws, no biting, and absolutely no—" Celine lunged. "Sucker punches!" Alina yelped, dodging just in time. The crowd roared as the challenge began, and Alina realized very quickly that Celine wasn't going to play nice. Celine's strikes were fast, brutal, and precise. Alina, on the other hand, was running on pure adrenaline, instincts, and the occasional lucky dodge. "Nice try," Celine growled, swiping at her again. Alina ducked, her mind racing. She couldn't match Celine's strength, but maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to. She faked a stumble, letting Celine think she'd found an opening. Celine lunged again, claws out. At the last second, Alina dropped low, sweeping Celine's legs out from under her. The warrior hit the ground with a thud. Before Celine could recover, Alina snatched up a handful of dirt and tossed it in her face. Celine froze, coughing and blinking furiously. You threw dirt at me?" Celine sputtered. Alina shrugged. "Hey, you said formal challenge, not formal etiquette." The crowd erupted into laughter, and even Marcus was doubled over, clapping his hands. Celine scrambled to her feet, but by then it was too late. Alina was already standing over her, pointing to the circle's edge. "You're out," Alina said, trying not to sound like she was still out of breath. Selena hesitated, glaring at Alina as if she was considering whether the shame was worth continuing. Finally, with a growl, she stepped out of the circle. The crowd cheered. Alina's heart was still pounding as she turned to Darius. "You won," he said, crossing his arms. "Barely," Alina muttered. "Pretty sure I'm going to pass out now." Darius stepped closer, his hand brushing hers. "You handled it well." Alina glanced at him, raising an eyebrow. That sounded suspiciously like a compliment. "It was," Darius said, his tone soft. "But don't make a habit of this." She smirked. "Don't worry, I'll stick to healing." But as Darius led her away, she couldn't help but notice how his hand lingered on her arm, his protectiveness wrapping around her like a second skin. It was sweet, sure, but also a little much. Later that day, while Alina was finally trying to recover with a cup of tea, a scout burst into the village square. "Alpha!" the scout shouted, breathless and wide-eyed. Darius and Alina both stepped forward. "What is it?" Darius asked sharply. "Fenris," the scout said. "He's taken control of the North Ridge. We've lost the hunting grounds." The crowd erupted into worried murmurs, and Darius's face darkened. Alina felt her stomach twist, as if things weren't bad enough already. Chapter 23. Alina had exactly 0 ideas on how to fix her growing identity crisis. After the whole Celine challenged dirt-throwing victory situation, she thought maybe things would start looking up. Nope. Instead, she found herself spiraling, wondering if the bond with Darius was real, or if it was just the moon goddess playing matchmaker for a laugh. "Do I actually belong here?" Alina muttered to herself as she paced the clearing near her cottage. "Or am I just the magical duct tape holding everything together until it snaps?" "Talking to yourself again?" Mira's voice came from behind her, as calm and knowing as ever. Alina spun around, sighing. "Mira, do you ever announce yourself like a normal person?" "Where's the fun in that?" Mira replied with a smirk, stepping closer. "Now, what's got you pacing like the squirrel stole your herbs?" Alina flopped onto a nearby rock. "Everything. The pack, Darius, the bond. It's all so much." Mira's smile faded, replaced by a look of quiet understanding. "Ah, you're doubting the bond." "Who wouldn't?" Alina threw up her hands. "I didn't choose this. The moon goddess just decided we're fated, and now I'm supposed to... what? Be his other half and fix everything? What if I'm not enough?" Mira sat beside her, her voice soft. "The bond isn't something to fear, Alina, but if you keep resisting it, you'll hurt yourself and him." Alina frowned. "So, what? I just embrace it and hope for the best?" "Not exactly," Mira replied. "You have to decide if you trust him, truly trust him, because the bond can't survive without that." "Great." More pressure. That night, as Alina tried to avoid Darius by reorganizing her herbs for the 4th time, the door to her cottage swung open. Darius stood in the doorway, his golden eyes sharp and unreadable. "We need to talk," he said, stepping inside before she could protest. Alina raised an eyebrow. "No, please, or may I come in? Love the manners." "Alina," Darius said firmly, ignoring her sarcasm. "What's going on with you?" She blinked. "What do you mean?" "You've been distant, hesitant. Even after everything you've done, it's like you don't believe you belong here." Alina sighed, turning away to fiddle with her tea kettle. "Maybe because I don't." Darius frowned. "That's not true." "Isn't it?" She shot back, spinning to face him. "This bond wasn't my choice, Darius. What if it's just fate messing with us? What if I'm only here because the moon goddess decided you needed a Luna?" His jaw tightened, his frustration evident. "You think I only claimed you because of fate?" "Well, didn't you?" Darius stepped closer, his voice low and intense. "I claimed you because you're strong, Alina. Because you're different. Not because of some prophecy." Alina's heart did a weird fluttery thing, but she shoved it down. "You say that now, but what if this bond falls apart? What happens to us then?" For once, Darius didn't have an answer. After Darius left, Alina sat by the window, staring at the moon and feeling more confused than ever. What did she want? Could she trust Darius, or was she just lying to herself? As her thoughts spiraled, something strange happened. The moonlight seemed to grow brighter, filling the room with an ethereal glow. Alina blinked, and suddenly, she wasn't in her cottage anymore. She stood in a misty forest, the trees glowing faintly in the moonlight. Ahead of her, a figure emerged. A beautiful, glowing woman with hair like silver threads and eyes that held the stars. "Alina," the woman said, her voice soft and melodic. Alina gawked. "Are you the moon goddess?" The woman smiled faintly. "I am." "Okay, wow," Alina muttered, pinching her arm. "This is either real, or I've officially lost it." The moon goddess stepped closer, her expression somber. "You doubt your path. You doubt your bond." Alina crossed her arms. "Can you blame me? You're the one who dropped me into this mess without an instruction manual." The goddess's smile didn't waver. You are stronger than you believe, Alina. But the choices you make now will shape not only your future, but Darius's as well. Before Alina could respond, the mist swirled around her, and a vision appeared. Darius stood alone in a battlefield, his body bloodied and broken. Wolves lay scattered around him, their eyes dull and lifeless. The golden light in Darius's eyes flickered, dimming as he fell to his knees. "No!" Alina cried, stepping forward, but the vision dissolved. The moon goddess's voice echoed around her. "If you do not embrace your bond, this is the path you will walk, one of division, pain, and loss." Alina's heart pounded as the glow faded, and she found herself back in her cottage, the moonlight spilling softly across the floor. She clutched the edge of the table, her breath coming in short gasps. She didn't know what scared her more, seeing Darius so broken, or the possibility that she might be the one who caused it. Chapter 24. Alina sat at the council table, tapping her fingers nervously as the pack's leadership filed in, muttering and exchanging tense glances. The mood in the room was 1 part paranoia, 2 parts barely restrained rage. Darius stood at the head of the table, arms crossed, radiating his usual, "I'm about to scare the fur off someone," energy. "Let's get started," he said, his golden eyes sweeping the room. "Venas has taken control of the North Ridge, cutting off our hunting grounds. We need a plan to drive him out. Quickly." Celine leaned forward, scowling. "Then let's hit him hard. Strike first, take back the ridge, and remind Fenris why he doesn't belong here." Several wolves nodded, murmuring in agreement. Alina raised her hand. "Question: how many wolves are we planning to lose in this strike-hard strategy?" The room fell silent, and all eyes turned to her. Celine rolled her eyes. "We'll lose fewer wolves if we act now. The longer we wait, the stronger Fenris gets." "Sure," Alina replied, tilting her head. "But why lose any wolves if we can trick Fenris instead?" Marcus grinned from his seat. "Trick him? This I've got to hear." Alina leaned forward, her mind racing as the idea solidified. "Fenris already thinks I'm the weak link, right? That I might turn on Darius?" Celine snorted. "You're not seriously suggesting—" "I am," Alina interrupted, ignoring her. "We play into his delusion, offer a temporary truce, make him think I'm doubting Darius, and lure him into a trap. That's reckless. You're putting yourself and the pack at risk." "It's no riskier than storming his territory with no plan," Alina shot back. "Fenris thinks he's smarter than us. Let's use that against him." The murmurs grew louder, the council clearly divided. Darius, who had been silent the entire time, raised a hand. The room instantly quieted. He turned to Alina, his gaze unreadable. "You really think this will work?" Alina nodded. "I do. Fenris wants me. He won't pass up the chance to gloat, or to think he's winning." For a long moment, Darius didn't respond. Then, to everyone's surprise, he said, "We'll follow Alina's lead." Celine looked like she was about to choke. "You can't be serious." "I am," Darius replied calmly, though his tone left no room for argument. "This is her call." Alina blinked, caught off guard. "Wait, really?" He turned to her, his eyes softer than she'd expected. "I trust you." Alina's stomach did a weird flip, but she quickly shoved the feeling aside. "All right then. Let's set the trap." After the meeting, Alina headed back to her cottage to prepare for the negotiation. She was halfway through scribbling notes on how to look convincing. Should I frown more, brood like Darius? Lale. When the door opened behind her, Darius stepped inside, his expression serious. "Hey," Alina said, trying to sound casual. "Here to give me a pep talk, or—" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he crossed the room and stopped just a few feet away, his golden eyes locked on hers. "If Fenris tries to take you," he said quietly, his voice low and dangerous, "I'll destroy him." Alina blinked, caught off guard by the sheer intensity in his tone. "Thanks, I think." "I mean it, Alina," he continued, stepping closer. "I don't care what it takes. If he lays a hand on you, I'll burn everything he's built to the ground. Her heart did the annoying fluttery thing again, and she forced herself to roll her eyes. You know, for someone who's supposed to be an alpha, you're dangerously close to sounding like an overprotective boyfriend. Darius arched an eyebrow. Is that a complaint? Not necessarily, she muttered, turning back to her notes. He smirked slightly, but the tension in his posture didn't ease. I'm serious, Alina, he said, his voice softening. Be careful, I can't lose you. She glanced at him, her teasing expression fading. I'll be fine, Darius. Trust me. He nodded, though the worry in his eyes didn't fade. As Darius left, Alina stared at her notes, her confidence wavering just a little, because deep down she knew that if this plan went wrong, it wouldn't just be the pack at risk. It would be Darius and her bond with him. Help grow you a generous people. Alina sighed and stepped into the clearing, feeling the weight of the moment settle on her shoulders. Fenris was already there, of course, leaning against a large rock with his signature smug grin plastered across his face. Well, well, Fenris drawled, pushing off the rock. If it isn't the brave little Luna coming to play diplomat. Fenris, Alina greeted evenly, refusing to let her nerves show. Thanks for agreeing to meet. Agreeing? He laughed, circling her like a predator sizing up its prey. Let's be clear, Luna. I'm here because I'm curious, not because I think you actually have anything to offer. Alina crossed her arms, tilting her head. Then why bother showing up? His grin widened. Entertainment, mostly. Great. Off to a fantastic start. The two of them stood a few feet apart, the tension thick in the cool night air. I'm here to propose a truce, Alina began, keeping her tone calm. This back and forth between our packs is pointless. It's costing lives on both sides. Fenris raised an eyebrow. A truce? From Darius? Don't insult me. It's not just from Darius, Alina countered. It's from me. I want peace. Fenris's dark eyes narrowed, gleaming with interest. You want peace? Or are you just following orders? Alina's jaw tightened, but she kept her composure. I make my own decisions. Do you? Fenris stepped closer, his voice lowering. Or are you just another piece on Darius's board? A pretty little Luna to stand beside his throne? Alina's wolf stirred, growling softly in the back of her mind, but she silenced it. This was what Fenris wanted. He was testing her. You seem awfully interested in my relationship, she said, arching a brow. Should I be flattered or concerned? Fenris chuckled, clearly amused. Oh, I'm interested, all right. You're different. Wow, Alina deadpanned. Thanks for the groundbreaking insight. Truly inspiring. His grin faltered, just slightly, and she counted that as a win. Tonus, you're strong, Fenris admitted. Stronger than I expected. But strength doesn't mean much when you're tied to someone who'll only drag you down. Alina's stomach churned, but she forced herself to stand tall. If you're trying to plant doubt, you're wasting your time. Am I? Fenris tilted his head, his tone softening. Tell me, Alina, do you really trust Darius? Do you know who he is beneath all that alpha posturing? Yes, she said firmly, even though the words felt heavier than she'd like. Fenris studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, to her surprise, he smiled. Not the smug, mocking grin she was used to, but something almost genuine. Interesting, he murmured. Glad to keep you entertained, Alina replied dryly. Now, about that truce. No, Fenris said simply. Alina blinked. No, I don't do truces, Fenris said, his grin returning. But I'll give you this. If you ever get tired of being Darius's little mate, my offer still stands. Alina clenched her fists, fighting the urge to punch him in the face. Noted. And ignored. Fenris chuckled, turning to leave. Think about it, Luna. You'd look good in power. As he disappeared into the shadows, Alina let out a shaky breath, her heart pounding. Marcus emerged from the trees, his expression half amused, half concerned. So, how'd it go? He's insufferable, Alina muttered. Marcus smirked. Welcome to the club. As they headed back to the village, Alina couldn't help but replay Fenris's words in her mind. He hadn't won, not by a long shot, but his insinuations about Darius, about trust and power, those words lingered, long after the night had swallowed the forest. Chapter 26. Alina barely had time to enjoy the smug satisfaction of holding her own against Fenris before everything went straight to chaos. She and Marcus were halfway back to the village, exchanging snarky comments about Fenris's villainous ego problem, when the first howl tore through the forest. Marcus froze, his hand already on his weapon. That's not one of ours. Alina blinked, her heart skipping. How can you tell? It sounds cocky, Marcus muttered, his usual humor replaced with a tense scowl. Before Alina could ask what cocky howls sounded like, wolves burst out of the underbrush, snarling and snapping. Fenris's wolves. Oh, come on, Alina shouted, dodging a lunging wolf by what felt like pure luck. Did he not get enough monologue time earlier? Marcus shifted into his wolf form without a word, tackling the nearest attacker with a ferocity that made Alina's wolf stir uneasily. More wolves poured in, surrounding them, and Alina realized quickly that this wasn't a warning or scare tactic. This was an ambush. She didn't have time to think. She yanked the silver blade Darius had given her from her belt, gripping it tightly as she dodged another wolf. Nice ambush, she shouted, slashing at an approaching attacker. 10 out of 10 for effort. The wolf growled, clearly not appreciating her humor. Darius appeared moments later, leaping into the fray like an unstoppable force of nature. His wolf form was a blur of black fur and gleaming golden eyes as he tore through Fenris's forces, snarling commands to the rest of the pack as they arrived to help. Alenya! He barked, shifting back to human form for just a moment. Stay close. Define close, she shouted back, narrowly avoiding getting knocked over by a wolf twice her size. Darius growled, shifting again and charging into another cluster of attackers. The fight was chaos. Wolves colliding in snarling heaps, growls and howls echoing through the forest. Alina tried to keep up, her heart pounding as she parried, dodged, and occasionally screamed when a wolf got way too close. But then something shifted. A wolf lunged at Marcus from behind, and without thinking, Alina raised her hand, shouting his name. A sudden pulse of energy burst from her palm, silvery and glowing, slamming into the attacking wolf and sending it flying into a tree. The forest went eerily quiet for half a second. Marcus turned, wide-eyed. What was that? Alina stared at her hand, which still tingled with the aftershock. I have no idea. But she didn't have time to process it, because another wave of Fenris's wolves charged in, and her instincts kicked in again. The energy came easier this time, flowing through her like liquid moonlight. Each time she moved, it felt like her body knew exactly what to do, where to strike, when to dodge, how to use the strange glowing power as both a shield and a weapon. She felt unstoppable, but also a little freaked out. The fight eventually broke apart as Fenris's forces retreated, dragging their injured with them. Darius shifted back, his chest heaving as he surveyed the clearing. Several Black Ridge warriors were injured, some limping, others lying still and groaning. The victory felt hollow. Alina stumbled over to Darius, still buzzing with the strange energy that had surged through her during the fight. "What the heck was that?" she asked, holding up her hand as if it might explode. Darius's golden eyes locked on hers, sharp with both curiosity and concern. "You don't know?" "Nope," she replied, popping the P for emphasis. "First time, definitely new." Before Darius could respond, Marcus limped over, holding something small and dark in his hand. "You're gonna want to see this," he said, his usual humor replaced by a grim tone. He handed the object to Darius, and Alina leaned closer to see what it was. Her stomach dropped. It was a carved wooden token, no bigger than her palm, with the Black Ridge crest etched into it. Darius's expression darkened, his grip tightening around the token. "This came from our den." Alina frowned. "So what? Fenris looted our stuff during one of his raids?" Marcus shook his head. "No. This was planted. Someone inside the pack gave it to him." The realization hit Alina like a punch to the gut. There was a traitor in the pack. Darius's gaze turned cold, his voice a low growl. "Whoever they are, they won't get away with this." Alina glanced at the token, a sinking feeling settling in her chest. Because if there was one thing she knew about betrayal, it was that it always made everything worse, so much worse. Chapter 27. Alina didn't know what she hated more. 1. The fact that Fenris's wolves had left behind a traitor-sized mystery. 2. Or the fact that the council meeting to address it felt more like a bad episode of a soap opera. Darius stood at the head of the council table, his golden eyes sharp and unreadable as he surveyed the room. The council members shifted uncomfortably under his gaze, some looking guilty just for existing. "Someone in this pack betrayed us," Darius growled, his voice low and deadly. "And if they think they can hide, they're wrong." Alina sat at the far end of the table, fidgeting with the edge of her sleeve. Her mind raced, replaying every conversation, every odd glance, every small interaction she'd had with the pack. She had been so focused on convincing everyone she belonged that she hadn't noticed the cracks forming right in front of her. "This is ridiculous," Celine snapped, crossing her arms. "If there's a traitor, we should be out hunting them down, not sitting here pointing fingers." "Interesting that you'd say that," Garrick muttered, raising an eyebrow. "Almost like you're trying to deflect." Celine's glare could have melted steel. "Say that again, old man, and see what happens." Darius slammed a hand on the table, silencing them both. "Enough, this isn't a game. Whoever did this didn't just betray me, they betrayed the pack. And whoever they are," Alina said quietly, "they're still here, watching, listening." The room fell into an uneasy silence. The meeting ended with no answers, no confessions, and no progress. Just more tension, more distrust, and more frustrated glares. Alina followed Darius out of the council hall, trying to ignore the sinking feeling in her chest. "This is all my fault," she muttered. Darius stopped, turning to face her. "What are you talking about?" "I should have seen this coming," Alina said, crossing her arms. "I've been so focused on trying to prove myself that I didn't notice someone was plotting against us." Darius's expression softened for a brief moment before hardening again. "This isn't your fault. It's mine. I should have handled Fenris before it got to this point." "Great," Alina said, throwing up her hands. "So we're both blaming ourselves. Super healthy dynamic we've got here." Darius didn't respond, his gaze drifting toward the forest. His shoulders were tense, his jaw tight, and Alina could see the cracks forming in the armor he always wore so well. "Darius," she said softly, reaching for his hand, "we'll figure this out, together." He pulled away, his voice colder than she'd expected. "I don't have time for together, Alina, not when the pack is falling apart." Her heart sank as he walked away, leaving her standing there, feeling smaller than she had in weeks. That night, the pack was on edge. Warriors patrolled the borders in pairs, their eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of danger. Alina couldn't sleep. She sat by the fire in her cottage, replaying day over and over in her mind, wondering how they'd let things spiral so far out of control. A knock on the door startled her, and Mira stepped inside, her face unusually serious. "Alina," she said quietly, "you need to come with me." Alina's stomach churned. "Why? What happened?" Mira didn't answer, just motioned for her to follow. They reached the edge of the forest, where a small group of warriors stood huddled around something. When they parted, Alina's breath caught in her throat. It was Marcus. He lay motionless on the ground, his usually cheerful face pale and lifeless. His shirt was torn, claw marks streaking across his chest. In his hand was a small, blood-stained piece of parchment. Darius stepped forward, his expression unreadable as he took the note from Marcus's hand and unfolded it. "What does it say?" Celine asked, her voice uncharacteristically quiet. Darius's eyes darkened as he read the note aloud. "The worst betrayal is the one you never see coming. This isn't over." The group fell into a heavy silence, the weight of the words pressing down on them like a storm cloud. Alina's chest tightened as she looked at Marcus's lifeless form. He had always been the one to lighten the mood, to crack a joke even in the worst of times. And now he was gone. Darius clenched his fists, his voice low and deadly. "Whoever did this is going to pay." Alina wanted to believe him, but as she stared at the note, the sinking feeling in her chest deepened. Because whoever the traitor was, they weren't just targeting Darius. They were targeting everyone. Chapter 28. Alina didn't know why she had agreed to go through Marcus's belongings. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was curiosity. Or maybe it was the fact that Marcus would have absolutely loved the idea of her snooping around his stuff. "Una duties," she muttered to herself, flipping open a drawer in Marcus's room. Darius hadn't said much since the discovery of Marcus's body, just retreated into his brooding cave, also known as his office. Alina, meanwhile, was determined to find answers. That's when she spotted it. A small, battered leather notebook tucked under Marcus's pillow. "Seriously, Marcus?" she muttered, pulling it out. "Under the pillow? That's where kids hide candy." She opened the journal and immediately felt a pang in her chest. Marcus's handwriting was messy, but full of personality. Each page filled with notes, observations, and the occasional sarcastic doodle of Darius looking grumpy. The first few pages were nothing groundbreaking. Patrol reports, supply lists, a half-finished poem about how much Selene needed to chill. But then, about halfway through, the tone shifted. Entry 45. "I've been watching Selene. She has been acting strange. Too quick to defend Fenris's motives, too eager to criticize Darius. Could be nothing, could be something. Either way, I don't trust her. Overheard Garrick talking about an ancient ritual, something about severing bonds. Didn't catch all the details, but it sounds bad. Going to dig deeper." Alina's stomach twisted as she read further. Fenris finished writing. "This is bigger than I thought. Fenris isn't just targeting the pack, he's targeting Alina. If he can break her bond with Darius, he might try to claim her himself. And if that happens, the pack is doomed." She froze, the journal trembling slightly in her hands. "Break the bond? Claim me?" Her wolf stirred uneasily, the implications hitting her like a ton of bricks. Fenris didn't just want to take Darius down, he wanted to take her. Alina flipped to the last few entries, her heart pounding. Entry 55. "I don't know who to trust anymore. If Selene is working with Fenris, we're all in trouble. But I can't make accusations without proof. Need to be careful." Entry 57. "If you're reading this, well, guess I didn't make it. Figures. Make sure Darius knows he can't let his anger control him. And tell Alina..." The sentence trailed off here. The ink smudged. Alina closed the journal, her mind racing. Selene? The bond-breaking ritual? Fenris's plan to claim her? It was too much. She glanced toward the door, half expecting Darius to burst in. But the hallway was empty, the den quiet. For a moment, she considered taking the journal straight to him. He needed to know. About Selene, about Fenris, about everything. But then she remembered the look in his eyes after Marcus's death. Cold, sharp, and teetering on the edge of losing control. If Darius read this now, it would be like lighting a match in a room full of gasoline. She shoved the journal into her bag, her hands shaking. "I'll tell him," she whispered to herself. "Just not yet." The weight of the secret settled on her shoulders as she left Marcus's room, the echoes of his words following her like a ghost. Make sure Darius knows he can't let his anger control him. She just hoped she wasn't already too late. Chapter 29. Alina had officially become a hermit. She holed up in her cottage, avoiding Darius, the council, and anyone who dared knock on her door. Her inner wolf paced relentlessly, growling at nothing and everything, while her human side spiraled into a delicious cocktail of guilt and self-doubt. She kept the journal hidden under her bed, tucked between a spare blanket and a very suspicious-looking jar of mystery herbs. "I can't tell him yet," she muttered for the 100th time, pacing the length of her tiny kitchen. "If I tell him, he'll freak out, and if he freaks out, he'll start a war, and if he starts a war, people will die." Her wolf growled softly. Yeah, I know," she grumbled, flopping onto her chair. "This is all my fault." Darius, of course, was not thrilled about her sudden disappearing act. When she didn't show up to the council meeting that morning, he stormed straight to her door, banging loud enough to wake the moon goddess herself. "Alina!" he called, his voice firm but laced with concern. "Open the door!" "Nope," Alina replied, staring at her tea like it might hold the meaning of life. "Alina," Darius growled, more insistent this time. "I know you're in there. Congratulations on your deduction skills," she muttered under her breath. "What's going on?" he demanded, his tone sharper now. "You've been avoiding me, avoiding everyone. If something's wrong, tell me." Something inside her twisted. He sounded hurt. But the thought of looking him in the eye and admitting that she was sitting on a ticking time bomb of a secret made her stomach churn. "I'm fine," she called back. "Just tired." Darius was silent for a long moment. "Is that all?" he asked finally, his voice quieter. "Yup," she said, forcing cheer into her tone. "Totally fine, just need a little space." When he didn't reply, she thought he might have left, but then he said, "If you don't trust me, Alina, just say it." Her heart dropped. She started, but the words wouldn't come. By the time she found the courage to stand and open the door, he was gone. That night, the dreams started. She was back in the forest clearing, but this time it was empty, bathed in an eerie silver light. Alina." She spun around, and there he was, Fenris, leaning casually against a tree like they were old friends meeting for coffee. "Miss me?" he asked, his grin sharp and predatory. "This is a dream," she said, crossing her arms. "You can't hurt me here." "Oh, I wouldn't dream of it," he replied, his tone dripping with mockery. "I'm just here for a little chat." Alina rolled her eyes. "Great. Let me guess. You're here to tell me how weak I am, how Darius doesn't deserve me, blah blah blah. Did I miss anything?" Fenris laughed, low and amused. "I don't have to tell you anything, Alina. You already know, don't you? You've felt it. The doubt, the cracks in your little perfect bond." Her wolf growled, but she ignored it, squaring her shoulders. "You're wasting your time." "Am I?" Fenris stepped closer, his eyes gleaming. "Because from where I'm standing, you're doing my job for me, isolating yourself, pushing Darius away. That's exactly what I want." "Get out of my head," she snarled. He smirked. "See you soon, Luna." She woke with a start, her chest heaving and her palms clammy. "Just a dream," she whispered to herself, but deep down she wasn't so sure. By the next morning, Alina was ready to retreat deeper into her cave of self-pity when a familiar knock echoed at her door. "Go away," she called, burying her face in a pillow. The door creaked open anyway, and Mira stepped inside, holding a steaming mug of tea. "Nice try, kiddo. But I'm not Darius. You can't scare me off," Alina groaned, sitting up. "Did he send you?" "No," Mira said, setting the tea on the table. "I came because the moon goddess did." Alina blinked. "The what now?" Mira sat across from her, her expression uncharacteristically serious. I had a vision last night. The moon goddess has a message for you. Of course she does, Alina muttered, reaching for the tea. This day just keeps getting better. Mira ignored her sarcasm. She said you have a choice to make, Alina. You can either stand beside Darius and lead the pack, or you can let the bond break and watch everything fall apart. Alina froze, the tea halfway to her lips. Wait, what do you mean break the bond? Mira sighed, her gaze softening. You're letting your fear control you, Alina, and if you don't take a stand soon, the bond between you and Darius will shatter. Without it, the pack can't survive. Alina set the tea down, her chest tightening. No pressure or anything. Mira smiled faintly. I know it's scary, but you're stronger than you think. You just have to trust yourself. And him. Alina stared at the floor, her mind spinning. She wanted to believe Mira. She wanted to believe in the bond, in her place beside Darius. But after everything that had happened, after all the doubt and fear, could she? As Mira left, Alina sat alone, her wolf restless inside her. The moon goddess had made her choice clear, but the path ahead felt impossibly heavy, like one wrong step could destroy everything. She glanced at the journal hidden beneath her bed, the weight of its secrets pressing down on her. If she couldn't trust herself, how could she expect anyone else to? Chapter 30. Alina was halfway through rereading Marcus's journal, for the 50th time, when a loud, aggressive knock rattled her door. She sighed, closing the journal and glaring at the door. If that's Darius, tell him I'm not home. It's not Darius, came a familiar, annoyed voice. Alina blinked. Celine? The door creaked open, and sure enough, there was Celine, looking as grumpy and intimidating as ever. Her arms were crossed, her expression hovering somewhere between, I'm going to regret this, and why am I here? Hi? Alina said, standing awkwardly. What are you doing here? Did you lose a bet? Celine rolled her eyes. Relax, Luna. I'm not here to fight you. Wow, thanks for clarifying. Celine stepped inside, closing the door behind her. We need to talk. Alina raised an eyebrow. About what? How much you secretly hate me? Celine actually smirked, which was unsettling in itself. I don't hate you. Not anymore, at least. Oh great, that's so comforting. Celine sighed, running a hand through her hair. Look, I've been watching, listening, and I think something's wrong in the pack. Alina frowned. You mean Fenris? I mean the council, Celine clarified, her tone grim. There's someone on the inside working with him, I'm sure of it. Alina hesitated, her heart pounding. You think it's one of the council members? Celine nodded. Garrick's been acting strange. Oren too. They've been pushing for more aggressive action against Fenris, but it feels off. Like they're trying to push Darius into making a mistake. Alina sat down, her mind racing. Marcus thought the same thing. He even wrote about it in his journal. Celine's eyebrows shot up. Marcus kept a journal? Apparently, Alina said, gesturing to the battered book on the table. And he thought Fenris was planning something big, something to do with me and Darius's bond. Celine sat across from her, uncharacteristically serious. Then we need to act. Together. Alina blinked. Together? Like, you and me? Celine sighed heavily. Don't make me regret this. Wow, Alina said, grinning. I never thought I'd see the day. Are we, like, frenemies now? Should we get matching bracelets? Celine glared. Let's not push it. The two of them spent the next hour strategizing, which mostly involved Celine pacing like a caged animal while Alina wrote down ideas between sarcastic comments. We need to confront the council, Celine said, stopping mid-pace. Force them to explain themselves. Right, Alina said, scribbling in her notebook. And how do we do that without getting thrown out of the room? You're the Luna, Celine replied as if it were obvious. You outrank them, Alina snorted. Yeah, because they've totally respected my authority so far. Celine rolled her eyes. Then make them. You're stronger than you think, Alina. It's time to start acting like it. The words hit harder than Alina expected. For so long she'd doubted herself, her place, her bond with Darius, her ability to lead. But hearing it from Celine of all people? That felt different. Okay, Alina said finally. Let's do it. Later that night, Alina stood outside Darius's office, the journal tucked under her arm. She took a deep breath, steeling herself before knocking. Come in, Darius called, his voice as steady as ever. She pushed the door open, finding him hunched over a map of the pack's territory, his expression grim. Alina, he said, straightening. Is something wrong? No, she said quickly. Well, yes, but not in the way you think. Darius tilted his head, clearly confused. Alina stepped closer, setting the journal on the desk between them. We need to talk. About Fenris, about the pack, about us. His golden eyes softened slightly, but there was still a flicker of tension. Go on. She hesitated for a moment before meeting his gaze head-on. I've been doubting myself, doubting the bond, and I'm sorry for that. But I'm done running away, Darius. From you, from the pack, from everything. His expression shifted, surprise flickering across his face. But I'm not just your mate, she continued, her voice steady. I'm your equal, and if we're going to get through this, we need to work together. No more secrets, no more walls. Darius stared at her for a long moment before a small, rare smile tugged at his lips. Equal, huh? He said, his voice soft but amused. Yeah, she said, crossing her arms. So get used to it. Darius chuckled, reaching out to take her hand. I think I can manage that. For the first time in what felt like forever, Alina felt a spark of hope. She wasn't just standing by Darius's side anymore. She was ready to lead. Chapter 31. Alina stood at the center of the training field, her stomach doing backflips as the pack gathered around her. This was it. The moment she had been avoiding for weeks. Time to step up, Luna style, and convince a bunch of werewolves that she wasn't just a healer with a knack for sarcasm. Darius stood beside her, his usual brooding intensity dialed up to 11. He hadn't said much since they'd decided to share Marcus's journal with the pack, but his presence was steady, grounding. Alina took a deep breath, then cleared her throat. All right, listen up. The pack fell silent, all eyes turning to her. No pressure, she muttered under her breath before squaring her shoulders. Marcus suspected something big, she began, holding up the journal, and he was right. Fenris isn't just targeting Darius. He's targeting us. The pack, our bond, everything we stand for. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, uncertainty and anger mixing in equal measure. Fenris's goal is to break the bond between me and Darius, Alina continued, her voice growing stronger. He's planning to use an ancient ritual to sever it. If he succeeds, it won't just weaken us, it'll destroy the foundation of this pack. A low growl rumbled through the warriors, their frustration palpable. But we're not going to let that happen, she said firmly. We're going to fight back. Celine stepped forward, her arms crossed but her expression resolute. How? Alina glanced at Darius, who gave her a small nod. She turned back to the pack. There's another ritual, she said, that can strengthen the mate bond instead of breaking it. If we perform it, Fenris's plan will fail. But it's risky, and it has to be done under the full moon, the same night Fenris is planning to attack. Silence fell over the pack as the weight of her words sank in. Why should we trust this ritual? Garrick asked, his tone skeptical. Because Marcus trusted it, Alina replied, holding up the journal, and I trust Marcus. That seemed to settle the room, at least a little. Darius stepped forward then, his golden eyes scanning the crowd. This isn't just about the ritual, he said, his voice commanding. It's about trust, strength, unity. We stand together or we fall apart. The choice is ours. The murmurs grew quieter, the pack exchanging determined glances. Alina took a deep breath, her wolf stirring inside her. We've been through worse, We can handle this. But we need everyone, all of you, to be ready. Fenris thinks he's smarter than us. Let's prove him wrong." Celine smirked faintly. "About time someone put that guy in his place." The pack chuckled softly, the tension lifting just a bit. Darius turned to Alina, his voice low enough for only her to hear. "You're good at this," she grinned. "Shocking, right?" As the crowd began to disperse, preparing for the inevitable confrontation, Alina and Darius stayed behind, standing under the glow of the setting sun. "Are you sure about this?" Darius asked, his gaze searching hers. "Not even a little," she admitted, "but it's the best shot we've got." His jaw tightened, but he nodded. "The ritual, it requires complete trust." "I know," she said softly, "and I do trust you, Darius, even when you're brooding." He smirked faintly. "I don't brood." "Sure you don't." For a moment, they just stood there, the weight of the coming battle pressing down on them. "We'll do this together," Alina said finally. "Not because of the bond, but because we choose to." Darius reached out, his hand brushing hers. As the moon rose higher that night, the pack prepared for Fenris's attack. Alina couldn't shake the feeling that this was the calm before the storm, but for the first time in a long time she felt ready, not just to fight, but to lead, because no matter what happened, she wasn't alone, and she wasn't running anymore. Chapter 32. Alina couldn't decide if the training field was buzzing with anticipation or simmering with barely contained chaos. Probably both. The pack warriors were sparring, sharpening weapons, and barking orders, all while Celine shouted instructions like a coach trying to whip a championship team into shape. "You!" Celine barked, pointing at a young wolf struggling with his stance. "If you plant your feet any weaker, the wind's gonna knock you over." Alina winced. "Wow, motivational as always, Celine." Celine turned, arching an eyebrow. "You're here. Should I be worried?" Alina smirked, walking over. "Relax. I'm not here to steal your thunder. Just thought we could, talk." "Talk?" Celine crossed her arms. "About what?" Alina hesitated before shrugging. "About the fact that you've been kind of terrifying, but also, weirdly helpful lately. It's throwing me off." Celine blinked, then burst out laughing. "Terrifying and helpful, I'll take it." "I'm serious," Alina said, her voice softer. "I know we haven't exactly been besties, but you've had my back. And I want you to know I appreciate it." Celine's smirk faltered for a second, replaced by something almost like respect. "You've come a long way, Luna. If you'd told me a month ago that you'd be leading us into a fight against Fenris, I would have laughed in your face." "Pretty sure you did," Alina pointed out. "Exactly." Alina grinned, extending her hand. "So, we good?" Celine rolled her eyes but shook her hand anyway. "Yeah, we're good. Just don't make me regret it. Deal." The next few hours were a whirlwind of preparations. Alina found herself standing in the middle of the chaos, trying to juggle questions, concerns, and the occasional sarcastic comment from Marcus's replacement, a snarky young warrior named Theo. "Luna," Theo said, sauntering up to her with a lazy grin. "Do we really need extra patrols near the East Ridge? I mean, who's even going to attack us from that side?" Alina gave him a flat look. "Oh, I don't know, Theo. Maybe Fenris's entire army?" He blinked. "Fair point." "Thanks for your input, though," Alina added with a grin. "It's super helpful." As Theo jogged off, one of the older warriors approached. A gruff, scarred wolf named Bran who had been skeptical of Alina from day one. "Luna," Bran said, his voice low but steady. "I wanted to say I was wrong about you." Alina blinked. "Wait, what?" Bran scratched the back of his neck, clearly uncomfortable. "You've proven yourself, and if you're leading this fight, I'll follow you." Alina stared at him for a second before grinning. "Wow, Bran, that was almost sweet. You feeling okay?" "Don't push it," he grunted, walking off before she could say anything else. By late afternoon, Alina felt like she'd finally gotten a handle on things. Warriors were ready, supplies were stocked, and Selene had even stopped yelling for 5 whole minutes. But of course, peace never lasted. A scout came barreling into the training field, panting and wide-eyed. "Alpha! Luna!" he called, skidding to a stop in front of Alina and Darius. "What is it?" Darius asked, his voice sharp. The scout gulped, his chest heaving. "Fenris's forces. They're already on the move. They'll be here by nightfall." The field fell silent, the weight of the news sinking in. Alina exchanged a glance with Darius, her heart pounding. "Well," she said, forcing a grin. "Guess we're skipping the warm-up." Darius smirked faintly, but his golden eyes were serious. "We've got work to do." Alina nodded, turning to the pack. "All right, everyone, you heard the man. Get ready. This is our territory, and we're not giving it up without a fight." The pack roared in response, their energy surging. As Alina stood beside Darius, watching the wolves rally around them, she felt a flicker of something she hadn't felt in days: hope. They might be outnumbered, outmatched, and walking straight into a storm, but they were doing it, together. And that made all the difference. Chapter 33. Alina crouched in the center of the clearing, the moonlight spilling over her like a silver spotlight. Around her, candles flickered in a circle, and the faint hum of energy buzzed in the air. Mira stood beside her, holding a tattered old book and muttering instructions that sounded more like a recipe for disaster than a ritual. "Okay," Mira said, flipping a page. "You're right," Alina muttered. "I'll just whip up some magical unity vibes while Fenris's wolves are trying to kill us. No pressure." Mira smirked. "You'll be fine. Probably." Reassuring. Across the field, the sounds of the fight had already begun. Growls, snarls, and the clash of claws on steel echoing through the night. Alina glanced up, her eyes locking onto Darius. He stood at the front lines, his wolf form massive and commanding as he barked orders and tore through Fenris's forces with terrifying precision. Her wolf stirred inside her, and for a moment, the bond between them pulsed, strong and unyielding. "We can do this," she told herself, closing her eyes and beginning the ritual. The battle was a blur of chaos and strategy. Selene led a group of warriors in a calculated sweep along the ridge, her movements sharp and deadly. Meanwhile, Marcus's replacement, Theo, was proving surprisingly competent for someone who usually specialized in sarcasm. "Keep your flank covered," Theo yelled, shoving a younger wolf out of harm's way before spinning to tackle an enemy with an impressive mid-air leap. Selene, of course, still found time to be sarcastic. "Nice move, Theo. Maybe next time, try not to trip first." "Noted," he shouted back, dodging a claw swipe. At the heart of it all, Darius was a force of nature, his golden eyes blazing as he took down enemy after enemy. His presence seemed to rally the pack, their movements synchronized as if powered by an unseen force, which, technically, they were. Alina knelt in the clearing, her hands pressed to the ground as she poured her energy into the ritual. The bond between her and Darius pulsed stronger with each passing second, sending ripples of power through the air. The candles around her flared brighter, the flames dancing in time with the rhythm of her heartbeat. "Good," Mira said, her voice steady. "Keep going. You're almost there." Alina's wolf growled softly inside her, urging her to push harder, to reach deeper into the bond, and then she felt it. A sudden surge of strength, not just within herself, but spreading outward. Across the field, the Black Ridge wolves seemed to move faster, strike harder. Fenris's forces faltered, their confidence waning under the combined weight of the pack's unity. Alina allowed herself a small, triumphant smile. "We've got this!" But of course it couldn't be that easy. A low, guttural growl cut through the night, silencing the battlefield. Alina's heart sank as she opened her eyes, looking up just in time to see him. Fenris. He stepped into the clearing like he owned it, his massive frame radiating raw, savage power. His eyes glowed red, and his claws gripped with blood. But it was the unsettling grin on his face that made Alina's stomach churn. "Well," Fenris drawled, his voice carrying easily over the battlefield. "This is cozy. A little ritual under the moonlight. How romantic." Darius shifted back into his human form, his chest heaving as he stepped forward. "Fenris," he growled, his voice cold and sharp. "This ends now." Fenris tilted his head, his grin widening. "You think so? Funny, I was just about to say the same thing." The two alphas locked eyes, the tension between them crackling like lightning. "Darius," Alina called, her voice trembling slightly. "Be careful." Darius glanced back at her, his golden eyes softening for a brief moment. "I've got this," he said. Alina wanted to believe him. But as Fenris lunged forward, faster and more savage than she'd ever seen, she couldn't shake the feeling that this fight was going to push both of them to their limits, and maybe beyond. Chapter 34. Alina had thought things were already bad, what with the snarling, clawing, and overall chaos of the battle. But when Fenris smirked and called out the traitor, everything went from bad to, "How is this my life right now?" "Come on out," Fenris taunted, his deep voice cutting through the noise. "No point hiding now, is there? Show them who you really are." The battlefield stilled for a moment, the tension so thick Alina could practically taste it. And then, to everyone's shock, or maybe not because wolves loved drama, Garrick stepped forward. The elder who had been all too eager to criticize Darius and suggest reckless plans now stood beside Fenris, looking smug and self-righteous. Alina blinked. "Seriously, Garrick? You? I didn't even have you on my list." Garrick snorted, his tone dripping with disdain. "Of course you didn't, Luna. You've been too distracted playing healer and pretending you belong here." "Ouch!" she muttered, feeling her wolf bristle. Way to kick a girl when she's down. Darius, however, wasn't in the mood for banter. "Traitor," he growled, his voice dark and dangerous. "You're siding with Fenris? After everything this pack has done for you?" Garrick sneered. "This pack has grown weak under your leadership. Fenris will bring strength, order." "Yeah, sure," Alina called out, her sarcasm in full swing. "Because nothing screams order like ambushes and murder," Fenris chuckled, clearly enjoying himself. "Whew, I like her. Such spirit," Darius snarled, his golden eyes blazing. "Enough! Let's finish this." The battle resumed with a vengeance. Darius and Fenris clashed like titans, their movements a blur of power and fury. Claws slashed, teeth snapped, and the ground shook beneath them as they fought. Meanwhile, Garrick and a small group of defectors turned on the pack, throwing everything into even more chaos. "Celine!" Alina shouted, her voice cutting through the noise. Celine didn't need an explanation. She was already leading a group of warriors toward the defectors, her expression a mix of determination and, "I told you so." "You heard the Luna," Celine barked at her warriors. "Let's show these traitors what happens when you mess with Blackridge." Could have done without the dramatics, Alina muttered under her breath, but she was grateful nonetheless. With Celine occupied and Darius locked in battle with Fenris, Alina turned her attention back to the ritual. The candles around her flickered wildly, the energy shifting as the bond between her and Darius struggled to hold steady amidst the chaos. "You've got this," Mira said from her spot nearby, her voice calm but firm. "Focus, Alina. Block out the noise." "Oop." "Easier said than done," Alina muttered, but she closed her eyes and reached deep within herself, channeling every ounce of strength she had left. Her wolf growled in approval, the bond pulsing brighter with each breath. But of course, Fenris wasn't done causing problems. In the middle of his fight with Darius, he broke away suddenly, his eyes locking onto Alina with a predatory gleam. "Alina!" Darius roared, lunging to stop him. Fenris was too fast. In a blur of motion, he dodged Darius's attack and sprinted toward the ritual circle, his grin wide and dangerous. "Time to end this," Fenris growled, his voice dripping with smug confidence. "You belong with me, Luna." Alina's eyes snapped open, her wolf snarling in defiance. No, I don't think so." Fenris reached the edge of the circle, his claws glinting in the moonlight. Alina scrambled to her feet, her hands glowing faintly with the ritual's energy. "Stay back!" she shouted, her voice shaking but determined. Fenris laughed, a deep, menacing sound. "And what are you going to do, little healer? Throw herbs at me?" "I mean, I could," Alina shot back. "But I was thinking more along the lines of this." Without thinking, she thrust her hands forward, releasing a burst of silvery energy that sent Fenris stumbling back. He recovered quickly, his grin now tinged with irritation. "You're full of surprises, aren't you?" "You have no idea," Alina muttered, her heart pounding as she prepared for the next attack. From the corner of her eye, she saw Darius charging toward them, his golden eyes locked on Fenris with a fury that could have melted steel. "Hang on, Alina!" he shouted. "Not going anywhere," she called back, bracing herself as Fenris lunged again. The ritual flickered around her, the bond pulsing stronger as she stood her ground. For the first time that night, she wasn't just fighting for survival. She was fighting to win. Chapter 35. Alina's knees wobbled as Fenris loomed over her, his red eyes gleaming with cruel amusement. "You're brave," he said, his voice low and taunting. "I'll give you that, but bravery won't save you." "Neither will bad cologne," Alina shot back, trying to ignore the fact that her hands were trembling. Fenris chuckled, a deep, bone-chilling sound. "Still full of jokes. Let's see how funny you are when you're mine." Her wolf snarled at the implication, surging with defiance, but Alina's human side was screaming, bad plan, before she could think of a witty retort or an exit strategy. Fenris lunged. Alina raised her hands instinctively, the energy from the ritual flaring to life around her. A silvery light exploded outward, slamming into Fenris and sending him skidding back a few feet. It wasn't enough to stop him, but it gave her a precious second to catch her breath. "Nice trick," Fenris growled, brushing off his shoulder like he'd just been hit with a mild inconvenience instead of a magical energy blast. Alina glared. "There's more where that came from." "Good," he said, his grin widening. "I was hoping for a challenge." As Fenris closed the distance again, Alina felt the bond with Darius pull taut like a lifeline. She could sense him nearby, his rage and desperation pounding in her chest like a second heartbeat. "You've got this," she told herself. "For the pack, for Darius." Fenris swiped at her and Alina barely dodged in time. She stumbled, her energy flickering like a dying candle. "You're out of your depth, Luna," Fenris said, circling her like a predator with its prey. "Give up and I might go easy on you." "Yeah, that's not happening," Alina snapped, summoning what little strength she had left. The energy from the ritual surged again, brighter this time, as if the bond itself was responding to her resolve. A wave of silver light erupted from her hands, hitting Fenris square in the chest and sending him flying. He hit the ground hard, groaning as he pushed himself up. "Stop, think I'm weak," Alina shouted, her voice shaking but victorious. Fenris wiped a trickle of blood from his lip, his grin now tinged with irritation. "You're full of surprises, I'll give you that." But before he could lunge again, a shadow barreled into him, knocking him to the ground with a force that shook the earth. It was Darius, his wolf form massive and glowing with the bond's energy. He snarled, his golden eyes blazing as he pinned Fenris down. "You don't touch her," Darius growled, his voice laced with fury. Fenris twisted beneath him, managing to break free, but he looked rattled. "This isn't over," Fenris spat, his red eyes flicking between Alina and Darius. Darius shifted back into his human form, standing protectively in front of Alina. "You're right. It's not over. But next time you won't walk away." Fenris smirked, though it was weaker now, blood dripping from a gash on his cheek. "You think this bond makes you strong? It's made you soft. Weak." Alina, still catching her breath, managed a grin. "Yeah? Funny how your weak just kicked your tail." Fenris's eyes narrowed. "Enjoy your little victory, Luna, because I'll be back, and when I am, There won't be a pack left to protect. With that, he turned and retreated into the shadows, his wolves following close behind. The clearing fell silent, the tension slowly ebbing away as the pack began to regroup. Darius just turned to Ina, his expression a mix of relief and worry. "Are you okay?" She nodded, though her legs felt like they might give out any second. Yeah. Just remind me not to do that again without a snack break first." Despite everything, Darius chuckled, pulling her into a tight embrace. You were incredible." "I know," she muttered into his chest, her voice muffled. "But maybe next time you take the scary rogue alpha, and I'll stick to herbs." Darius smirked, resting his forehead against hers. "Deal." As the pack gathered around them, battered but standing strong, Alina couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. They weren't out of the woods yet, but they were still standing. And that was enough for now. Chapter 36. The first rays of dawn peeked through the trees, casting long shadows over the battered remains of the battlefield. Alina sat on a boulder, staring at the carnage around her and trying not to burst into very undignified, very messy tears. The good news? Fenris and his forces were gone, limping back into the shadows with their tails tucked. The bad news? The cost had been ridiculously high. Several of Blackridge's strongest warriors lay injured, or worse. The din looked like a tornado had personally taken offense to it, and Alina herself felt like a wrung-out dishcloth, every muscle in her body protesting even the idea of moving. "This is what victory looks like?" she muttered, glaring at the smoldering remains of what used to be a training dummy. "Because it sucks." Celine, limping slightly but still exuding her usual don't-mess-with-me energy, dropped onto the boulder beside her. "Well, Luna," Celine said, grimacing as she stretched her legs. "At least we're alive." "Mostly." "Yay, us," Alina replied flatly, wincing as she shifted. Celine smirked. "You're getting the hang of this sarcasm thing." "Yeah, it's my coping mechanism. I'd like to trade it in for a nap, though." Across the clearing, Darius was directing the remaining warriors, though it was clear he was running on pure stubbornness at this point. His movements were slower, his shoulders slumped with exhaustion, but he refused to stop. Alina frowned, her bond with him humming faintly, a mix of pride and worry. "Darius," she called, hopping off the boulder and nearly face-planting because her legs decided now was the perfect time to give up. He turned, his golden eyes meeting hers, and for a brief second, relief flashed across his face. Before she could say anything, he swayed, his knees buckling. "Whoa!" Alina shouted, rushing to his side just in time to catch him, or more accurately to half-catch, half-slow his collapse so they both didn't end up in the dirt. "Darius," she said, shaking him lightly. "I'm fine," he muttered, though he sounded anything but. "No, you're not," she snapped, her wolf growling in agreement. "You're supposed to be the big scary alpha, not a sack of potatoes." He let out a weak laugh, leaning heavily on her. "Guess I overdid it." "Understatement of the year," Alina grumbled, lowering him to the ground and pressing a hand to his chest. The bond between them pulsed faintly, steady but strained. "I've got you," she said, more to herself than him. As she worked to stabilize him, Mira appeared, looking both exhausted and smug. "Told you the bond would keep him going," Mira said, kneeling beside them. "Yeah, but it's not exactly doing a great job right now," Alina snapped, though her words lacked bite. Mira smirked. "You've done well, Luna. He'll pull through." "I better," Darius muttered, his voice barely audible, "because I'm not done yet." "Of course you're not," Alina said, rolling her eyes. "What else is new?" Once Darius was stable enough to rest without her hovering, Alina stood and surveyed the scene. The pack was tending to the injured and trying to salvage what they could, but the atmosphere was heavy, tinged with the losses they'd suffered. Fenris might have retreated, but his presence lingered like a shadow over the pack, a constant reminder that he wasn't gone for good. "We barely," Selene said from behind her, arms crossed. But we'll rebuild. That's what we do. Alina nodded, her jaw tightening. Yeah. And next time, we'll be ready. Later, as the pack settled into the remnants of the den, Alina sat beside Darius, who was propped up against a pile of furs, looking slightly less like he'd been trampled by a herd of moose. You really scared me, you know, she said, her voice soft but firm. Darius chuckled weakly. Scaring people is kind of my thing. Not like that. He turned to her, his golden eyes serious. The bond. It kept me grounded, kept me alive. Without it, without you, I wouldn't have made it. Her chest tightened, but she forced a grin. So what you're saying is, I'm your secret weapon. He smirked, his hand brushing hers. Something like that. Alina's grin faded slightly, her voice dropping to a whisper. We won, but he's not done. Fenris will be back. I know, Darius said, his voice steady despite his exhaustion. But when he does, we'll face him. Together. For the first time that day, Alina let herself believe it. They were battered, bruised, and maybe a little broken, but they were still standing. Chapter 37. Alina woke up to the sound of someone banging on her door. Again. Why do people even bother with doors in this pack? She muttered, rolling off her cot and stumbling toward the noise. She yanked the door open to find Theo, looking far too awake for someone who'd been in a battle less than 24 hours ago. Morning, Luna, he chirped, grinning like he hadn't been tackled by a rogue wolf yesterday. It's not morning, Alina groaned, squinting at the barely risen sun. What do you want, Theo? And please tell me it's not another emergency. Theo scratched the back of his neck. Depends. Do you count a rival alpha sending emissaries to our territory as an emergency? Alina stared at him, her brain short-circuiting. Wait. What? They're waiting in the clearing, Theo said, shrugging like this was no big deal. Thought you'd want to handle it, seeing as how you know the alpha's out of commission. Oh, great, Alina muttered, dragging a hand down her face. Yeah, sure. Let me just pull on my big important Luna pants and deal with this. The clearing was already buzzing with tension by the time Alina arrived. Celine stood off to the side, arms crossed and glaring daggers at the emissaries, who were trying very hard to look unbothered. They were dressed in dark leather and carried themselves with the kind of arrogance that said, "We don't really want to be here, but we'll act superior anyway." Luna, one of them said, inclining his head slightly. His tone was polite, but it had the faintest edge of condescension. We bring greetings from Alpha Calder of the Iron Fang Pack. Oh, how nice, Alina said, folding her arms. Tell Calder we said hi, meeting over. The emissary blinked, clearly thrown off. No, we have a proposal to discuss. Of course you do, Alina muttered. The second emissary, who was even more smug-looking than the first, stepped forward. Iron Fang has heard of your recent troubles. With your alpha injured, perhaps you find yourselves in need of stronger alliances. Alina arched an eyebrow. And let me guess. Calder's just so generous that he wants to help out of the goodness of his heart. Exactly, the second emissary replied, completely missing the sarcasm. Celine snorted, muttering under her breath, "Idiot." The first emissary shot her a glare before turning back to Alina. Our alpha offers protection. Together our packs would be stronger, united. And what does Calder want in return? Alina asked, her tone sharp. The emissary smiled faintly. Only mutual trust and cooperation. Celine stepped forward, her voice cold. Translation. He wants to stick his nose in our business and claim half our territory. The emissary's smile didn't falter. You wound us with your assumptions. Alina sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose. Look, I'm sure Calder thinks he's being very clever, but Blackridge doesn't need protection. We're fine. The emissary's polite facade cracked slightly. Luna, with all due respect, your pack has been weakened. Fenris is still out there. This alliance could save lives. Alina hesitated, the weight of his words pressing down on her. He wasn't entirely wrong. The pack was vulnerable. Darius was still recovering. and Fenris wasn't going to stay quiet for long. But the thought of tying Blackridge to a rival alpha, one who clearly saw this as an opportunity to swoop in and play hero, made her wolf bristle with unease. "We don't need Calder's help," Alina said firmly, stepping closer. "And we definitely don't need his protection. Blackridge will stand on its own, like it always has." The second emissary frowned. "Are you certain that's wise?" "Yes," Alina said, her voice steady. "I'm certain. Tell Calder thanks, but no thanks." The emissaries exchanged a glance, their frustration barely concealed. "Very well," the first one said, his tone clipped. "We'll deliver your message, but don't say we didn't warn you." "Oh, I won't," Alina said cheerfully, "because I'll be too busy running a pack that doesn't need Calder sticking his nose where it doesn't belong." The emissaries left, muttering under their breath, and Alina let out a long sigh of relief. Celine walked up beside her, a rare smile tugging at the corner of her lips. "Not bad, Luna. For a second there I thought you might actually consider their offer." "No, thanks," Alina said, shaking her head. "The only alpha I trust to lead this pack is Darius, even if he's currently passed out and grumpy." Celine chuckled. "He'll appreciate that, eventually." As Alina headed back toward the den, she couldn't help but feel a flicker of pride. The pack had looked to her for leadership, and she'd delivered. Maybe not perfectly, and maybe with a lot of sarcasm, but still. For the first time, she truly felt like their Luna, and no rival alpha or rogue or condescending emissary was going to change that. Chapter 38. Alina was starting to think the pack had a weirdly short memory span. After all, just a few days ago, they'd been staring at her like she was some out-of-place houseplant. Now, half the younger wolves were following her around like she'd hung the moon. "Luna!" One of the pups, an excitable boy named Cade, called as he stumbled into the training field. "Celine said I'm supposed to train with you today." Alina raised an eyebrow. "Did she now?" Cade nodded enthusiastically, his energy bouncing all over the place. "Yeah, she said you're the one who knows how to deal with chaos," Alina snorted. "Well, she's not wrong." Celine, standing off to the side with her arms crossed, smirked. "You've got this, Luna. Just channel your inner drill sergeant." "Right," Alina muttered. "Because I'm so scary." Celine laughed. "They're more afraid of disappointing you than they are of me. Good luck." With that, Celine strolled off, leaving Alina to deal with a group of eager but slightly clueless younger wolves. "All right, pups," Alina said, clapping her hands together. "Let's get to it. First lesson, how not to trip over your own tail." Meanwhile, Darius was finally back on his feet. He stood near the edge of the training field, watching Alina with a mix of amusement and quiet admiration. "She's doing well," Marcus's replacement, Theo, said as he approached. Darius nodded. "Better than well. She's exactly what the pack needs." Theo smirked. "That's high praise coming from you, Alpha." "Feeling soft today?" Darius shot him a look, though it lacked its usual sharpness. "Careful, Theo." "Noted," Theo replied, grinning as he wandered off. Darius turned his attention back to Alina, who was currently demonstrating how to dodge an opponent without falling flat on your face. Her laughter echoed across the field, light and infectious. For the first time in weeks, the pack felt steady. Later that day, Celine found Alina sitting on a rock near the border, staring out at the woods. "Don't tell me you're doing that brooding thing Darius does," Celine teased, dropping down beside her. Alina rolled her eyes. "I'm not brooding, I'm food thinking." "Same thing," Celine said with a smirk. The two sat in comfortable silence for a moment before Celine cleared her throat. "You know, I wasn't sure about you when you first got here." "Really? Couldn't tell," Alina deadpanned, earning a laugh from Celine. "But," Celine continued, her tone softening, "you've proven me wrong. You're stronger than I thought. And the pack sees it too. Alina turned to her, surprised. Thanks, Celine. That means a lot. Celine shrugged, though her expression was warm. Someone's gotta watch your back, and let's be real, you'd be bored without me. True, Alina said with a grin. You do keep things interesting. Celine held out a hand. So? Partners? Alina took it, shaking firmly. Partners. Just don't expect me to let you boss me around. Celine smirked. Wouldn't dream of it. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Alina felt a strange pull in the back of her mind. It wasn't the bond with Darius. This was something else. Something distant but insistent, like a faint whisper on the wind. Her wolf stirred uneasily, and she glanced toward the border, her gaze narrowing. Something wrong? Selina asked, noticing her shift in mood. Not sure, Alina said quietly, but it feels like something's still out there. Celine followed her gaze, her expression hardening. You think it's Fenris? Alina shook her head. No, he's gone, for now. But as the pull tugged at her again, she couldn't shake the feeling that their fight was far from over. Whatever was waiting in the shadows, it wasn't done with them yet. Chapter 39. The den had been transformed into a party central for wolves. Torches lined the paths, casting warm golden light on the newly repaired structures. Tables were piled high with food, and the air buzzed with laughter and howls of celebration. Blackridge had survived, and the pack was stronger than ever. Or at least, that's what the party was supposed to remind them. Alina smiled as she walked through the crowd, nodding at warriors who greeted her with newfound respect. But deep down her chest felt tight, because for all the smiles and cheers, she couldn't forget the faces of the wolves they'd lost. They'd be proud, you know, Mira said, appearing at her side like she'd teleported. Alina flinched. Do you always have to sneak up on me? It's a gift, Mira replied with a smirk. But seriously, Marcus and the others, they'd be proud of what you've done, of what the pack's become. Alina's gaze drifted to the horizon, where the moon hung heavy and full. I hope so. As the night deepened, the pack gathered in the central clearing for the ceremonial hunt. It was an old tradition, one that symbolized unity and strength. Darius stepped forward, his golden eyes scanning the crowd. His presence was as commanding as ever, but there was a warmth to him now that hadn't been there before. Tonight we honor the pack, Darius began, his voice strong, for standing together, for fighting for each other, for surviving. The crowd howled in agreement, the sound echoing through the trees. And we honor our Luna, Darius continued, his gaze locking onto Alina's. For her courage, her strength, and her heart. Blackridge is stronger because of her. Alina's face burned, but she couldn't help the small smile that tugged at her lips. Step forward, Alina, Darius said, his tone softer now. She did, feeling the weight of every eye on her. Darius reached for her hand, pulling her to stand beside him. Tonight, we seal our bond, not just as mates, but as leaders. Together. The pack howled again, the sound filling the clearing as the bond between Alina and Darius flared, strong and steady. The hunt was a blur of motion and excitement. Alina had never been a big fan of running through the woods at full speed, but with the pack surrounding her, it felt exhilarating. Celine ran at her side, grinning like she'd just won the lottery. Not bad, Luna, you're almost keeping up. Almost? Alina panted, glaring at her. I'm doing great! Ahead of them, Darius turned, his wolf form sleek and powerful under the moonlight. He gave Alina a playful nudge as she caught up, his golden eyes practically glowing. By the time they returned to the den, the pack was breathless but glowing with triumph. Later, as the celebration wound down and the pack began to drift off to their dens, Alina found herself alone with Darius. They stood near the edge of the clearing, the moonlight casting long shadows across the trees. You were incredible tonight, Darius said, his voice low. Stop, Alina said, though her cheeks flushed. You're going to make me blush. He smirked, pulling her closer. Good. For a moment they stood in comfortable silence, the bond between them thrumming softly. Alina, Darius said quietly, his tone turning serious. The moon goddess's gifts. He hesitated, his golden eyes searching hers. They've marked you. You're meant for more than this, for something greater. Alina's stomach flipped. That sounds ominous. It's the truth, Darius said, brushing a strand of hair from her face. But whatever comes, we'll face it together. She smiled faintly, leaning into him. Good, because I'm not doing this alone. And under the watchful eye of the moon, they sealed their bond in a way only wolves could, letting the night carry them into a new chapter of their story, one full of challenges, unity, and hopefully a little less chaos. For now, at least, they were home. Chapter 40. The full moon hung heavy in the sky, bathing the forest in a soft silver glow. The pack stood in a wide circle around the clearing, their faces lit with a mix of reverence and anticipation. Alina stood at the center, the faint hum of energy buzzing in her chest. "All right," she muttered to herself. "Don't trip, don't mess this up. Don't—" "Talking to yourself again?" Celine whispered, smirking as she passed by. "Stop listening," Alina shot back, though her voice was more exasperated than annoyed. Selina just laughed, stepping into her place among the warriors. Darius appeared beside Alina, his presence steady and grounding. His golden eyes met hers, and he gave her a small nod. "You're ready." Alina raised an eyebrow. "You're sure about that? Because I'm pretty sure my wolf is pacing like a caffeinated squirrel right now." Darius chuckled softly. "You've got this." "Right," Alina said, taking a deep breath. "Okay, let's do this." The ritual began with a howl, deep and resonant, starting with Darius and spreading through the pack like a wave. Alina stepped forward, holding her hands out as the bond between her and Darius pulsed, brighter and stronger than ever. The energy rippled through the clearing, weaving between the wolves like an unbreakable thread. "This isn't just about us," Alina said, her voice carrying over the gathered wolves. "This is about all of us. The pack, the family we fought for, bled for, and stood beside." The wolves growled softly in agreement, their eyes gleaming in the moonlight. "We've been through hell," she continued, her voice steady. "We've lost, we've hurt, but we've also risen stronger than ever, and tonight we stand together, not as individuals, but as one." Darius stepped beside her, his golden eyes scanning the pack. "Together, we're unstoppable. No matter what comes next, Blackridge stands united." "Always!" The pack howled again, the sound echoing through the forest. As the energy from the ritual reached its peak, Alina felt a warmth spread through her, steady, powerful, and undeniably hers. She wasn't just a healer anymore. She wasn't just Darius's mate. She was Luna. Her wolf let out a triumphant howl, and for the first time, Alina didn't feel the slightest bit out of place. She belonged. The pack dispersed slowly, their spirits lifted despite the lingering scars of battle. Alina stayed behind with Darius, the clearing quiet now except for the soft rustle of leaves in the breeze. "Not bad for a timid healer," Darius said, his tone teasing but warm. Alina snorted. "Not bad for a brooding alpha." He chuckled, pulling her close. "Look at us. Who'd have thought?" "Not me," Alina said, grinning. They stood together in silence, staring up at the moon. "You've come a long way," Darius said softly. "Yes," Alina replied, her voice just as quiet, "but I couldn't have done it alone." "You didn't," he said, brushing a strand of hair from her face, "but you've become exactly what this pack needed, what I needed." Alina smiled, leaning into him. "Guess we make a good team." "The best," Darius agreed, as the moonlight bathed them in its glow. Their silhouettes merged, a symbol of everything they'd fought for, and everything they'd become. Blackridge wasn't just a pack anymore. It was home.